let's look at what to look out for and how to navigate misinformation, I guess, or just bad information and sales lines and stuff on online advertisements and how to get through that. First one comes, this is a highly regulated field, right? So the Federal Trade Commission regulates auto dealers, but specifically in the world of financing and advertising very, very heavily. One thing you'll see out there is advertised prices and or lease payments. This is happens a lot with leases. You know, it's $300 a month with a little tiny asterisk. And the asterisk is big because more often than not, they'll pick what they call loss leaders. So it'll be a base spec. It's never the one pictured on the billboard or in the ad. And they're usually they'll structure the lease as the lowest mileage possible. It'll be like 5,000 miles a year with, $10,000 down, plus sales tax, plus this, that, whatever. So a $300 lease becomes $700 a month by the time you get the parameters you want, 12,000 miles a year, low money down, your credit sucks, whatever. So, and you want the heated seat subscription. One exception to this was back when I was working at the Land Rover dealer in 2004, the LR3 had just come out, and for some crazy reason, they were just giving them away, but they were giving them away in the form of really, really aggressive leases. And the manufacturer essentially subsidized the lease, bought down the money factor, jacked up the residual, and we were writing $400 a month leases on a loaded Land Rover LR3 left and right with no money down, all the miles, tax in, $400 a month. It was amazing.
That's wild.
It's wild. I don't believe in leasing cars. For the record, it is the most expensive way to buy a car, but every now and then, a cheat code lease comes along that kind of makes way more sense than buying. Very, very rare. And again, everybody thinks that the lease they got is the exception. It's that one, and it's rarely is. People never leave a car dealer saying they got a terrible deal or got taken advantage of. They all brag that they got a great deal, but let me be honest, the house always wins. What their goal is to get you in the door. Good salesmen thrive on getting you in the door. Once you're there, they'll close you and you'll walk out wondering what just happened. So beware of low advertised leases or payments because you got to read the fine print. Private sellers, though, man, they can be almost worse than dealers. And some of these lines, they're good. The first one would be fully loaded. This is one I hear a lot. We're coming at this mostly from a high-end perspective, right? Sports cars, Porsches, whatever. But guys will call me and they'll be like, oh, yeah, my car's fully loaded. I got a Porsche 911 Turbo, fully loaded. I'm like, what does that mean? Oh, it's got the full leather and bows and navigation. I'm like, cool. All that stuff was standard on the turbos. Well, but it's got a sport chrono. Great. 80% of them did. This happens all the time. People just say fully loaded because it has, a backup camera and leather. It means absolutely nothing. And extreme version of that is they'll say, well, I had every available option, everything. I checked every single box. Now, once in a blue unicorn moon, I see spec sheets and I'm like, oh my goodness, you really did. You spec'd the leather surround for the key entry slot and deviated stitching on your key pouch. They go crazy. But when you're dealing in high-end cars, every available option isn't a thing. Porsche, Ferrari, the high-end dealers, McLaren with their MSO division will always find more things to sell you. If you want to spend money, they will create options for you. They will engrave your initials on the valve stem if you want. Every available option, that line is ridiculous. If you want to know what a car has, ask somebody for the VIN, put it in VIN analytics, whatever, ask them for the spec sheet, because rarely, if ever, have I heard when somebody said it was loaded or had every option, almost always it was a base spec car. Here's one. New tires. Translation, they were installed last year and they were the 2-year-old closeouts at Tire Rack. So they're 3 years old even though they were put on last year. And if they're Pirellis, that means they are cracked and dated and time to go. I swear that's been my experience with Pirellis. They do not last.
You still never see that on a Corvette listing.
they'll turn it around. They'll advertise original tires.
Original tires, factory air.
Yes.
The whole thing.
Original nitrogen in the tires. Here's a good one. I see this. I literally have screenshots on my phone from so many listings. And this is project cars. This is kit cars. This is lawn ornaments. It runs. It just needs
so there
fill
is
in
a
the
thing.
blank.
There's so in like software development, the world, I've heard of this joke where somebody will have like a just jar, and every time you say the word just, you got to put like $1 in it or something, because so many people think, oh, you just do this, just do that, and there's so much complication in that one word, and I feel like it's the exact same thing for what you're talking about.
But then, like, they'll be specific, right? I've seen it just needs a fuel pump.
So many times you see that. Okay. What does that mean?
Okay. Does that mean the tank rotted out and so the, crust made its way into the fuel pump and so it needs the entire fuel system? But yes, it also has a bad fuel pump. It just needs fresh gas. The best one. I've seen this on a Corvette C4 for that matter, which shouldn't be that hard to get running unless there's a crossfire injection. It just needs a battery. Bro,
those are real easy to get.
They're like $150, which is a lot of money for a Corvette C4 owner. I realize they're $150. Anybody with like an adjustable wrench or just an 8 mil and 13, I think they mount with, can install it. It's right there. Although, well, I guess on the C4, some of them you do have to take off that side little fender panel. But again, it's like a 10 millimeter bolt. If it just needs a battery, friggin' put one in and sell it. If somebody's saying it just needs a battery, it just needs a battery and an engine and tires and a fuel system and rodents removed from it. One of my favorite ones, this goes over to the Ferrari world. And this is an example of like information disparity of people putting something out there to hide something else and thinking they're being transparent or getting you to think that they're being transparent. And this is a trick you need to watch out for. You need to ask the information that you want. The major service was done 1,000 miles ago. We're talking Ferrari here. Major service can apply to other cars as well. But in the Ferrari world, major service includes timing belt and tensioners. This is very, very important because both of them are known for failing, and Ferrari has very strict service recommendations, intervals of replacement for those. And typically it's 3 years or 30,000 miles, whichever comes first, which, let's be honest, 30,000 miles, which never comes first because Ferrari people don't drive their cars. So it's always 3 years. People selling their Ferrari, I see this in ads. I ask people about it. They I've got dozens of times I see this. Major service was just done. It was done 1,000 miles ago. Great. How many years? Well, 7. Okay. Well, then it needs done. Well, but it's just done 1,000 miles ago. No. There's 2 parameters of when it needs to be done. When you give one, that means you're hiding the other.
Exactly.
So people, don't be led astray by these little things here. Ask the questions that you want the answers to and get them in, the language that you want. Switching to race cars, the line I've probably heard more than anything else, ready to race. Bunch of horse crap. Ready to race means it needs service before it goes around the track. Ready to race means the axles are expired, the engine is due for a rebuild, the tires are aged out, the belts are aged out, the CV joints are leaking, the fluid is dark, and the brake rotors are grooved. Ready to race means that you're going to spend, well, I don't know what kind of race car, but let's say 10% of the value on getting it ready to race. Golly, I've heard this so many times. I mean, we bought a car. I won't name the shop because it doesn't matter, but it was a 2009 911 that had been built as a race car, like stripped, gutted, cage, engine rebuild, like the whole thing, all new parts. So it's basically a brand new car other than the chassis. And it had like 1 test hour on it. So if anything ever was ready to race, this was it. It was new. Thankfully, we shipped it. We bought it. We brokered the deal, but we shipped it to our facility just as a matter of logistics. I thought there's no way we need to look this car over. It's a reputable shop. It is quote unquote ready to race. We got it in. It barely made it in our shop because it wouldn't even track straight. The header bolts were finger tight. Like, I can't remember why it didn't track straight, but it was unsafe to drive. Like, you would not have been able to complete a lap around a track. Most of it was fairly minor stuff. Like, okay, we probably spent $1,000 getting it actually there, but I'm like, this is a brand new car from a reputable shop. If that isn't brand new and ready to race, I don't know what is. None of them are. They just aren't. When you buy a used race car or track car for that matter, it's a used track car. And you will need to do everything you want to do to it to make sure it's safe, to make sure it's mechanically sound, to make sure it's ready for you to go pound the snot out of it. Along the vein of race cars, one I have heard before, never raced or wrecked. It was a practice/backup car. Tyler, do you want to take your hand at interpreting that statement?
It means it was never finished, like being put together.
My interpretation means it was wrecked once practicing, then never used again after it was repaired.
So it's never wrecked in its current state.
Right. No, I literally inquired about a race car, and they said it was a backup car, it was a practice car, low hours, never raced, never over-revved, whatever. Turns out it had been completely like pinged to the moon, like 11, 12,000 RPM on the first lap or whatever. It was wrecked on like the third lap. Yes, it was a practice car, and yes, it had low hours, but never raced, wrecked, or over-revved literally meant it had been raced, wrecked, and over-revved. I'm like, what the heck, people?
You obviously could find that out, like if you do a shred of diligence.
It's tough with race cars, though. That's the
true.
thing. And people trust these shops because the same people selling them, because dealers hate dealing with race cars for good reason. The same people selling them are the race shops that maintain them. So it's like, well, if they're the ones being dishonest, how are you going to find out?
That's true.
It's a total conflict of interest. And, everybody trusts these race shops because they've got great reputations. And most of them do. And I'm not here to disparage any specific reputations, but most race shops that have great reputations aren't that great. It's just their customers don't know any better. They're acting off of information disparity. The customers believe what they tell them. Well, your car needs a $40,000 engine rebuild every 10 hours. Okay. Oh, so this car needs nothing. Do you want to know this is very scientific, the average amount we've spent on servicing a car that quote unquote needs nothing?
It's got to be a few thousand, I'm assuming.
Yeah, not that bad. It's about $1,500.
Okay.
But
that's definitely more than nothing.
And that's not even, when we got done with it, it wasn't a needs nothing car. It was just like, okay, everything is reasonably up to date and everything works. It doesn't have any glaring obvious needs. But yeah, needs nothing? No. That's a crock of crap.
Gonna need something.
My favorite line and least favorite line, guaranteed investment.
Blech.
This car will only go up in value. Why are you selling it? We have a customer that is consigning half a dozen cars with us right now. And he bought them all from a well-known dealer. And the salesman told him on all of them that these were great investments and they go up in value. And he's all ticked off because guess what? They haven't.
Yeah, they've corrected.
Or they're like reasonably the same or whatever because he bought them a couple years ago, so his timing was good. But I'm just like, that's crap salesmanship, right? If you're a salesman, sell the car. Don't sell investments and don't lie about them. You don't know what they're going to do, but it's like sell the car on its own merits. Because if the car is that good and the customer believes in that and you can sell that many people on how great the car is, then guess what? Your prophecy will come true. It will go up in value. Because that's when cars go up in value, is typically when a bunch of people realize, oh, this car is way more awesome than everyone thinks it was, and the market hasn't realized it yet, and then the market realizes it. And it goes up in value naturally because it's a great car. Like my Aston Martin DB9 stick coupe, of which there are only 135, and is fantastic to drive. And the stick shift is actually faster, and the car is lighter than the Touchtronic
the
automatic.
flappies.
Yes. So those are going to go up in value because everyone else is finally going to realize how sweet they are. But anyway.
I feel like a lot of people are selling a story or an investment or something rather than just the car. Because something that's been in my head as we're talking about this is the folks that, like, they start their ad. You see this a lot with Porsches. with like regaling you of the history of the model and when it came out in Porsche's history and why it's super rare and special. You see this with 968s a bunch. Because they're like, oh, it came in the wire to brand. It's all of this crap.
Because 968s need all of that because they're not that good, and so you have to build them up with.
But I see it like you see it everywhere.
License.
But I've noticed that they're like selling the rarity or the history of like just the brand or the model, not the specific car.
This is good. This leads right into the shrewd negotiator. I gotta learn how to pronounce that. This ad. Somebody shrewdly negotiating. This is how they want to sell their Porsche 911. Description. Got to clear out some room in the garage. My loss is your game because this car amazing. It makes you reevaluate the road. Things like, can I get up to speed to merge? Yes, easily. Can I pass that person? OMG, yes. Can I carve out a turn so tight and perfectly that it makes me giggle uncontrollably like a 12-year-old? Daily. Trust me when I say that a 911 is worth selling a kidney for, maybe two. And this one is more special than most. Here it comes. The custom Fab Speed exhaust with carbon fiber tips growls in the most perfect way. The bespoke deck wing is one of a kind. The electronics have been upgraded to include wireless CarPlay, Android Auto. You need this car. You just don't know it yet. As much as I want to hate on it, I have to look at both sides of this, right? This is either the best or the worst description ever, depending on the buyer. Because like you said, there's some people that feel the need to educate you on all of the Porsche history, et cetera, et cetera. The proper enthusiast in us already knows all the performance numbers, all the history, everything about it. So we don't need that education, right? So he skipped that fluff. And the child in us only cares about the performance numbers and the things he said, like, can I pass that person? Can I take a turn? Does it make a growly noise? Really, the best car guys are the ones that have maintained that childlike sense. They don't buy a car because it's rare. They buy it because they love it. They don't buy it because somebody else will like it or because of resale value. They buy it because they love it. So the stats that he might list are really irrelevant to somebody that only cares about how can I enjoy life better and more. And he nailed it. But you know, the adult in us does need to know whether or not it's been wrapped around a tree or ever had an oil change or, you know, just important small details like that. But that's one way of negotiating. You need this car. You just don't know it yet.